one of the kind of downsides of the whole fiat currency system is that when the government doesn't feel like taxes are going to be popular enough to fund what they want to spend, they just print the difference. So they say, well, we can't finance this as transparently as we want to, so we're going to finance it opaquely. And an example I use is that during World War I, the UK wanted to get involved, even though they weren't being attacked. This conflict's going on in Europe, and they say, well, we want to get involved for geopolitical reasons. We don't want Germany to win, and so we're going to get involved. And so they know that taxing everyone, they're not going to tax a UK steelworker and say, yeah, we got to go fight the Germans in Europe, so we have to raise your taxes. That's going to be very unpopular. You're going to get a revolution if you tax too much. Maybe you can do a little bit, but if you try to tax a ton, it's not going to be workable. The other option is you raise debt. You say, well, okay, we'll pay you interest, buy these bonds, and we'll use it to go do war. And those in UK's case, not enough people subscribed to those bonds. They were like, no, I don't think that's a good investment. And so instead, the UK just printed the difference. And what they did was they devalued everyone's savings without telling them in advance, without them being able to even know or measure what's happening. And it just got taken from them. And so in a Bitcoin world, if more people hold their own hard money that a government can't print, then basically all of government expenditure has to be financed by either taxation or small amounts of debt, to kind of smooth things out here and there. But basically, it kind of forces governments to be somewhat more transparent and say, okay, if you want to do this expenditure, how are we going to finance it? Because we can't just print the difference. Yeah, and I think when we put ourselves in their shoes, it's very rational for them to assume that's the case. Like you said, most technologies are better over time, and therefore they're like, well, Bitcoin was the concept, but it's that's clearly not going to be the end. That's the thing. That's okay. What's the newer one? What's the better one? It's been 14 years. Of course, there's better technology. One point of contrast is that when we look at protocols, they tend to stick around for a very long period of time. When you make things purposely simple and robust, the design space is very limited, and the technological growth and upgrades tend to happen in layers on and around that very simple foundation. So, for example, Ethernet is like 50 years old, right? And it's nowhere near being out of date. They upgrade the speeds over time in backward compatible ways, and it's this evolving protocol that ultimately is very slow to change. And we think, well, why are we still using Ethernet? It's 50-year-old technology. And it's because it's literally still the best we have is why. And it has that dominant network effect. That even if you make something marginally better, well, you're competing with the fact that every computer has an Ethernet port and not this other protocol. And then two, any changes you might make, future Ethernet versions could maybe incorporate. And so they just get absorbed into that dominant protocol. The same is true for TCP/IP. The same is true for USB. These protocols tend to be very long-lasting technologies. And, ultimately, when we look at Bitcoin and block size wars and crypto and stuff like that, a lot of it comes down to trying to figure out what problem we are trying to solve. And so some of the initial assumptions were, I want to make transactions easier. So I want to be able to use base layer money to buy coffee, for example. But it turns out, for a lot of people, that's not the problem that they have. I mean, in the United States, I don't have a problem buying coffee. My Visa card works well enough. My cash works well enough. I don't go out every day and think like, man, my money's so bad at transactions. Now, in certain countries, that might be the case, but even then, it's often not. What a lot of us have instead is, I want to be able to store liquid value, move it around globally, have nobody be able to stop me, or at least very hard to stop me. And that I know that the rules, I'm not going to get rug pulled in the next 20 years, right? That I'm not going to I don't have to watch it too closely because it's not just going to get changed. There's no central entity that just, double the number of units or cents to me or something. And so in that sense, the problem we're trying to solve is an immutable foundation of money, basically a decentralized central bank, a decentralized ledger that is robust and backed by energy and distributed so that it's very hard to corrupt. To the extent that it'd be corrupted, it'd be a very long and slow process, and the burden of proof is always on the corruptor. And so, when with the whole block size wars, I think people erred in the wrong direction for trying to, sacrifice that decentralization to make it faster. But you're solving the wrong problem. And when it comes to crypto, a lot of it is about trying to make them more expressive and complicated. But again, that generally comes at the cost of decentralization and security. So when we think of decentralization and security, we want something that, one, the code base is as simple as possible to minimize bugs and hacks and problems and incentive breakdowns. And then two, we want it to be sufficiently decentralized so that any entity that wants to either change the rules of the network or to censor the network has a massive uphill battle, even if you think out 10, 20, 50, 100 years.